Okay, I will narrate the novel, The Lies of Locke Lamora, by Scott Lynch in English, focusing on summarizing the main ideas and core content of the story. I will aim for approximately 6,000 words to provide a comprehensive retelling. The Lies of Locke Lamora. The narrative retelling our story begins in the sprawling, enigmatic island city of Camor, a place built upon the mysterious ruins of an ancient, unknown race. It is here, amidst the harsh realities of orphan life, a life often tragically brief, that a peculiar young boy named Locke Lamora emerges. Blessed with a quick wit and an innate talent for thievery, Locke, barely out of infancy, has already navigated the treacherous currents of Camor's underworld, dodging both the specter of death and the chains of slavery. His unusual journey ultimately leads him into the unlikely tutelage of an enigmatic figure known as Chains, the eyeless priest. Despite his moniker, Chains is neither blind nor a true priest, but rather a con artist of extraordinary talent who dedicates himself to molding a carefully selected family of orphans into the sophisticated criminals known as the gentlemen bastards. Under Chains's discerning eye and rigorous instruction, Locke's natural inclinations for larceny flourish. He rapidly ascends through the ranks, eventually leading the gentlemen bastards in a series of audacious confidence games, each more outrageous and intricate than the last. His reputation grows, and he soon becomes infamous throughout Camor as the Thorn of Camor, a phantom figure whose stings leave no wealthy noble safe from his cunning grasp. The world, or at least the wealthy and privileged part of it, remains blissfully unaware that these high-stakes heists are not the work of common pickpockets, but of a tightly knit band of brothers who, by day, pass themselves off as petty thieves, successfully deceiving even the formidable Kappa Barsavi, the undisputed ruler of Camor's criminal underworld. However, the delicate balance of Camor's underworld is about to be shattered. A shadowy, far more ambitious figure, known only as the Great Cane, begins to emerge from the depths. This mysterious antagonist systematically eliminates Kappa Barsavi's most trusted men, and in his ruthless machinations, he manipulates Locke, unknowingly using him as a pawn in his grand scheme to seize control of Camor's vast criminal empire. As a bloody coup unfolds, threatening to dismantle everything Locke holds dear in his mercenary life, he makes a solemn vow to outwit the Great King at his own brutal game, or die trying. The narrative then takes us back in time, to the prologue. The Boy Who Stole Too Much, revealing the earliest chapters of Locke's extraordinary life and the peculiar circumstances that shaped him. The Boy Who Stole Too Much. A genesis of deception. The story of Locke Lamora's improbable beginnings unfolds in the 77th year of Sendovani, a long, wet summer that saw the thief-maker of Camor, a man whose trade was the procurement and training of child thieves, make an urgent, unannounced visit to the eyeless priest at the temple of Perlandro. The thief-maker's desperation was palpable. He sought to offload the Lamora boy, convinced that this particular orphan was more trouble than he was worth. "Have I got a deal for you?" the thief-maker declared, a phrase that, in hindsight, seems almost a comical understatement of the boy's disruptive potential. Chains, the eyeless priest, met this overture with a weary cynicism born of past dealings. He recalled Calo and Galdo, two giggling idiots. He was still struggling to untrain from the thief-maker's dubious habits, and the exorbitant price he'd paid for Sabatha, a girl whose talent justified every copper but had still cost him everything but my dead mother's kneecaps. Yet, the thief-maker persisted, highlighting Locke's Camorri heritage, his mixed Theran and Bodran blood, and the undeniable larceny in his heart, sure as the sea's full of fish piss. The offer of a discount, a rare concession from the notoriously stingy thief-maker, immediately raised Chains' suspicions. Chains, a man whose keen senses belied his blindfold, rightly deduced the thief-maker's uncharacteristic generosity stemmed from problems with the boy, problems so severe that if a sale couldn't be brokered, Locke faced a grim fate. "I'm going to have to slit his throat and throw him in the bay. And I'm going to have to do it tonight." This stark declaration piqued Chains' interest. He mused that Calo, Galdo, and Sabatha could perhaps use a new playmate, or at least a new punching bag, and agreed to consider the boy's problem, provided the thief-maker could prove himself worthy of a mere bowl of piss as payment. The narrative then transports us to the night Locke Lamora first arrived at the thief-maker's domain, the old graveyard on Shades Hill. This was no ordinary graveyard. Beneath its unassuming surface lay a labyrinthine network of tunnels and mausoleums, transformed into the thief-maker's subterranean kingdom. A bustling ant mound of orphan thieves. 88,000 souls populated Camor, generating a constant trickle of lost, useless, and abandoned children. Some fell prey to slavers, others to starvation or disease, and the unlucky ones ended up swinging from the Black Bridge for petty thievery. Those who remained were swept up by the thief-maker's crew, destined to bend the knee to the bent old man who ruled this grim realm. Locke, a mere 5 or 6 years old, was the youngest and smallest of a group of 30 or so catchfire orphans, acquired during a devastating outbreak of Black Whisper, a plague that spared only those under 11 or 12. He hadn't even been specifically chosen by the thief-maker. He had simply crept away with the others as though he belonged to the thief-maker. Even a single free plague orphan was a windfall not to be overlooked. Upon entering the dimly lit, mist-shrouded tunnels of Shades Hill, the catchfire orphans were met by the cold, curious stares of the Shades Hill orphans, who watched silently from every nook and cranny. The air was thick with the smells of night soil and stale bodies. The thief-maker, in a rare moment of theatrical indulgence, presented his home as a family, a place of safety and belonging, where they would be fed, sheltered, and protected in exchange for their labor. A feast, meager by noble standards but a veritable banquet for the starving orphans, was laid out. Bony chicken, fresher fish tails, brown bread, salted peas, lentils, and overripe tomatoes. The new arrivals devoured the food with uncoordinated ferocity. After they had eaten their fill, the thief-maker laid out his 3 items of business. He explained that he had paid for them, rescuing them from slavery, and that his protection meant swift and merciless consequences for anyone who dared to harm them. Finally, he introduced the true nature of their new lives. "You mean that you want us to steal things?" Locke, with startling bluntness for a child his age, cut through the thief-maker's flowery language. The old man, though momentarily nonplussed, was intrigued by Locke's uncompromising view of a certain exercise of personal initiative. Upon being asked his name, the boy, who had nothing but a surname from his miserly parents, revealed himself as Locke. "After my father," the thief-maker, observing Locke's lack of reticence regarding stealing, a trait he usually had to train out of his new wards, sensed a unique potential. He questioned Locke about his past, asking if he had stolen before the plague. Locke's affirmative nod and the revelation that he hadn't lost his parents to the plague suggested a self-reliant history. Then, the astonishing truth. Locke produced 2 small, cheap leather purses from under his rags. "Where did you get these, then?" the thief-maker asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "The watchman," Locke whispered. "Some of the watchmen picked us up and carried us." The thief-maker was aghast. "You lifted these from the fucking city watch? From the Yellow Jackets?" Locke's enthusiastic nod confirmed his audacity. "Gods," the thief-maker whispered, realizing the precariousness of the situation. "Oh, gods. You may have just fucked us all superbly, Locke, after your father Lamora. Quite superbly indeed. This incident, breaching the secret peace between the underworld and the city watch, was the very first of Locke's many problems." The thief-maker had to grovel, bribe, and reassure the watch captain that the infraction was merely an innocent mistake by a newcomer. But this was just the beginning of Locke's insatiable hunger for larceny. If he had a bloody gash across his throat and a physicker was trying to sew it up, Lamora would steal the needle and thread and die laughing. "He steals too much." This was a complaint the thief-maker never thought he'd voice about a burgeoning thief. The narrative continues to detail Locke's training within Shades Hill. The orphans were divided into streets, daytime pickpockets and distractors, and windows, nighttime burglars. Locke, despite quickly graduating to the ranks of clutchers, those who actually picked pockets, preferred working with the teasers, distractors. He honed his craft to an art form, perfecting techniques like spewing over chewed orange pulp as a substitute for vomit, and snapping a concealed twig to simulate a broken leg near wagon wheels. His theatrical distractions became so effective that the thief-maker had to caution him against becoming a celebrity and distracting his fellow teasers from their actual work. Then came the infamous incident of the Elderglass Vine Tavern. Locke, feigning Black Whisper symptoms, caused a panicked exodus, allowing his companions to loot the establishment. However, later that night, panicked drunks set the tavern ablaze, nearly wiping the Narrows from the map and triggering a city-wide riot. The thief-maker, furious, confronted Locke, emphasizing the breach of the secret peace and the uncircumscribed chaos he had unleashed. He sternly warned Locke against further, uncircumspect actions, threatening severe punishment if he didn't stick to simple, discreet thievery. Yet, Locke's innate audaciousness persisted. The prologue culminates with the thief-maker, having exhausted his patience and fearing the repercussions of Locke's escalating, uncircumspect exploits, securing permission from Kappa Barsavi to kill the boy. As a last resort, he visits Chains, hoping to salvage a slim profit from this intractable problem. The transfer A new master, a new game. Locke, oblivious to the grim fate that had been sanctioned for him, trailed in the thief-maker's long shadow towards the Temple of Pelandro. The city of Camor, at this hour, was transitioning into false light, a magical twilight unique to the Eldrin-built structures, where the vast glass towers and bridges shimmered with an ethereal, multicolored glow, overshadowing the natural stars and moons. It was a spectacle of otherworldly beauty that hinted at the city's hidden depths and ancient origins. At the Temple of Pelandro, Father Chains, the eyeless priest, was in full performance, bellowing dramatic pronouncements about the plight of orphans and the merciful nature of Pelandro, Lord of the Overlooked. Locke, despite his cynical upbringing, was captivated by Chains's oratorical power. He observed the priest's imposing figure, the white silk blindfold, the black iron manacles chaining him to the temple's interior, a theatrical display designed to elicit sympathy and donations. The thief-maker, performing for the benefit of any listening passers-by, presented Locke as a new initiate, destined for the temple's tests of apprenticeship and initiation. Chains, with alarming accuracy for a blind man, touched Locke's face, assessing his character. He noted the boy's small size but perceived a certain measure of character, and unusual degree of personal initiative. With a theatrical clap of his hands, Chains declared the day's business done and ushered Locke into the temple. Leaving the thief-maker to scurry away, the strut of a man set free, inside the musty, mold-eaten sanctuary, lit by the pastel glare of false light, Locke was introduced to Kalo and Galdo, two white-robed boys who were ostensibly Chains's initiates. The initial illusion of Chains's blindness was quickly shattered. The priest, after a feigned healing miracle performed by Locke's touch, dramatically ripped off his blindfold, revealing perfectly normal eyes. He was not blind, nor was he a priest of Pelandro, but an initiated servant of the nameless 13th, the thief-watcher, the crooked warden, the benefactor, father of necessary pretexts, Kalo and Galdo, the infamous, giggling idiots the thief-maker had mentioned, swept back their hoods, revealing themselves as sturdy, olive-skinned twins with distinctive hooked noses. They were not Pelandro's initiates, but fellow apprentices in Chains's unique brand of thievery, acquired from the thief-maker shortly after Locke's own arrival at Shades Hill. Chains then presented Locke with the grim reality of his situation. He had indeed paid for Locke, and he was cheap, but not with mere coin. He produced a single white shark's tooth, the death mark of Kappa Barsavi, Locke's former master's boss. This tooth signified that the thief-maker had obtained Barsavi's permission to kill Locke, and Chains had purchased this right. The death mark was now Locke's to wear around his neck, a constant reminder of how close he had come to a slit throat and the absolute power Barsavi wielded over the underworld. Chains's chilling explanation served as a powerful lesson in the brutal realities of their world. Locke, bewildered and shaken, confessed to the accusations of being uncircumspect, admitting the Elderglass Vine incident and the subsequent riot. Chains, having already heard everything from the thief-maker, revealed the true severity of Locke's mistakes. The gravest transgression was not merely stealing from the city watch, but the amount, a full crown, an unheard-of sum for a street urchin, implying a deeper, more sinister purpose that threatened the thief-maker's delicate balance with Barsavi. Furthermore, Locke's actions had inadvertently led to the deaths of Veslin and Gregor, two other Shades Hill boys, whose bodies were found with their throats slit by the thief-maker as a consequence of Locke's cunning manipulations. Chains, with a calculated ruthlessness that mirrored Locke's own latent cunning, then imposed a death offering upon the boy. For every life Locke had inadvertently ended, Veslin, Gregor, and 4 or 5 other little comrades from streets who had known about the incriminating white iron coin. He was to steal 1,000 full crowns per head. This monumental task, amounting to thousands of crowns, would take years, but it was the price of his life, a testament to his respect for the dead, and his oath of blood to the nameless 13th. This grim pact solidified Locke's place as a gentleman bastard, a paysan, to Chains, and ushered him into a world of deception and misdirection where brains and a big mouth were the true tools of thievery, not mere nimble fingers. Part 1. Ambition, the Don Salvara game. The narrative then leaps forward, focusing on the first major game undertaken by the newly formed gentleman bastards, the Don Salvara game. Locke's rule of thumb for a good confidence game was meticulous. 3 months to plan, 3 weeks to rehearse, and 3 seconds to win or lose the victim's trust forever. This time, however, Locke planned to spend those 3 seconds getting strangled. The scene opens with Locke on his knees in a dead-end alley, a hemp rope coiled around his neck, while Kalo, his twin brother, feigns strangulation. Nearby, Gene Tannen, the muscle of the operation, lies in the muck while Galdo pretends to kick his ribs in. Their target, Don Lorenzo Salvara, is expected to pass by and, ideally, rush in to rescue them from their supposed assailants. The meticulous planning for this elaborate con is revealed. Bug, the youngest of the bastards and their top eyes, is positioned on a temple roof overlooking the alley, tasked with signaling Salvara's approach and keeping an eye out for any interlopers. Gene, known for his incongruously soft voice and brawler's physique, explains the Don's predictable Penance Day ritual. A weekly offering at the Temple of Fortunate Waters. A deathbed promise to his Vadran mother. The entire scheme is built on precision, each detail accounted for. Gene's constant reiteration of the plan emphasizes the high stakes. One good screw-up will make the fate of those poor bastards look sunny in comparison to what we'll get, a chilling reference to the city's shackled slop wagon criminals. Bug, despite his eagerness, nearly derails the plan. A city watch patrol appears, threatening to expose the staged attack. In a desperate, impulsive act of glorious stupidity, Bug throws himself off the temple roof onto a rubbish pile, screaming wildly to distract the patrol. The ensuing chaos, combined with Bug's resourceful pickpocketing of the watch sergeant and a painful, orphan's twist to the face, a weighted sack of hot peppers, successfully diverts attention, though it leaves Bug bruised, bleeding, and in immense pain. Don Salvara, meanwhile, emerges from the temple, momentarily distracted by the distant commotion of the watch. He and his loyal man, Conte, are then confronted with the staged scene in the alley. Two finely dressed men being walloped out of them by masked bravos. The Don, a man of impulsive honor, immediately rushes to their aid, with Conte, a formidable knife fighter, close behind. The assailants, Kalo and Galdo, fling their victims, Locke and Jean, at the Don, and then scramble over a pre-positioned rope to escape, leaving the Don and Conte to rescue the mud-splattered Master Lucas for White, Locke, and his attendant, the portly Grauman, Jean. Locke, in his persona as Lucas for White, a refined merchant from Emberlin, expresses profuse gratitude, subtly planting the seeds for his elaborate con. He expresses surprise at Salvara's presence, hinting at a shared business interest, and then, with feigned embarrassment, requests the Don's assistance in securing a meeting with Don Jacobo, Salvara's sworn enemy. This carefully constructed deception appeals to Salvara's desire to outmaneuver his rival, and he readily agrees to meet with Master for White at the Shifting Revel the following day. The second act of the con unfolds at the Shifting Revel, a bustling marketplace transformed into a spectacle of floating barges and elaborate entertainments. Locke, still in the stifling Emberlin attire of Lucas for White, endures the relentless heat and the subtle flirtations of Doña Sofia Salvara, the Don's discerning wife. He subtly reveals the precarious situation in Emberlin, an impending civil war and the House of Bel Oster's desperate need to transport its invaluable aging brandy stock out of the war-torn region. He offers Salvara a seemingly irresistible partnership, 50% of the immense profits from the brandy sales in exchange for financing its transport to Camor. During the revel, a teeth show is underway, a brutal spectacle where Contrarchiala, female gladiators, battle wolf sharks in the water. This serves as a tense backdrop for Locke's negotiations with Salvara, who, despite his initial enthusiasm, attempts to renegotiate the terms in his favor. Locke, feigning reluctance, concedes a minor point, securing the deal with a handshake. The violent death of a Contrarchiala in the arena, torn apart by a shark, serves as a stark reminder of the inherent dangers of their world. Locke, however, maintains his composure, his feigned dismay a testament to his growing mastery of deception. The first part concludes with Locke's return to the house of Perlandro, where Chains, having meticulously observed Locke's actions through his network, reveals the true depth of the boy's mistakes and the precise consequences of his uncircumspect behavior. Chains explains that the sheer value of the white iron coin Locke had planted, combined with his careless involvement of Gregor, had sealed the fate of several other orphans in Shades Hill, effectively getting them killed. To atone for these unintended deaths, Locke is bound by a blood oath to steal 1,000 full crowns per head, as a death offering for the fallen, a monumental task that solidifies his commitment to the gentleman bastards and their unique code of conduct. This interlude serves as a powerful reminder of the hidden costs of Locke's ambition and the strict rules governing the world he now inhabits. Part 2. Complication. The Great King's shadow deepens. The second part of the narrative begins with the gentleman bastards reveling in their newfound wealth from the Don Salvara game. The vast quantities of gold coins, converted into tyrants, are meticulously counted by Bug and Jean, overflowing the cellar of the house of Perlandro. Locke, returning from another successful negotiation as Lucas for White, announces a further acquisition of 7,500 crowns, gloating over the ease with which Salvara is parting with his money, convinced that their Mark's knowledge of for White being a lie actually facilitates the con. The irony, of course, is that they are themselves being played on a far grander stage. Despite their immense wealth, the gentleman bastards face a peculiar dilemma. They have no meaningful way to spend or utilize their accumulating fortune without drawing unwanted scrutiny. Their existence as unassuming sneak thieves demands a modest lifestyle, forcing the vast majority of their gains into the elderglass-lined vaults beneath the temple. They maintain the illusion of their petty thievery by periodically replenishing their bullshit box with easily acquired trinkets from other cities, which they then present as their weekly haul to Kappa Barsavi. Their carefully constructed illusion is about to face its gravest threat. As they prepare to pay their weekly tithe to Barsavi, the news of the great king's escalating violence reaches them. Tal Tesso, a powerful garista and close friend of Barsavi's son, is found brutally murdered, nailed to the wall of an old shop, balls cut off. This marks the seventh such killing in 2 months, unsettling the core of Barsavi's power and prompting the gentleman bastards to question their own security. Locke, however, remains resolute, convinced that fleeing Camor would be a greater betrayal to Barsavi and invite even harsher retribution. Their visit to No Hope Harza, the notoriously surly pawnbroker who serves as the unofficial conduit for stolen goods to Barsavi, further highlights the precariousness of their situation. Harza's blunt, insulting appraisals of their loot and his grim pronouncements about the great king underscore the growing tension in the underworld. Upon reaching the floating grave, Barsavi's formidable water-bound fortress, they are met with a palpable sense of unease. Increased guards, grim faces, and the muffled sounds of violence emanating from within signal a deeply troubled Kappa. Nazca Barsavi, the Kappa's feisty daughter, intercepts Locke, her usual brazenness replaced by a deep-seated worry. She reveals her father's fear, his uncharacteristic reclusion within the grave, and her suspicion that the great king's attacks are far from random. She pleads with Locke to humor her father, to show him unwavering loyalty and respect, hoping that his reasonable plans for the future again will signal his return to a more stable state of mind. Inside Barsavi's opulent, yet blood-stained, audience chamber, Locke witnesses the Kappa's brutal interrogation of 2 full crowns men, prisoners dangling upside down from wooden racks. Sage Kindness, a torturer with a placid demeanor, employs horrifying methods to extract information, demonstrating the ruthless efficiency with which Barsavi maintains control. The prisoners, however, remember nothing, their minds seemingly blanked, hinting at a power far beyond conventional torture. Barsavi, enraged by their inability to remember, executes them summarily, tossing them into the waters beneath the grave. In this charged atmosphere, Locke presents his taxes to Barsavi, a paltry sum compared to their true fortune, but one that is met with the Kappa's surprising approval. Barsavi praises Locke's reliably correct and courteous behavior, a stark contrast to his usual subordinates. He then dismisses Nazca, revealing his true purpose, to discuss Locke's future. Barsavi, surprisingly candid, reveals his plans for his sons, Anjay and Pachero, whom he views as incautious and arrogant, unlike the perceptive Nazca. He expresses a desire for Locke, his most prudent garista, to provide good counsel to his sons in the future. Then comes the bombshell. Barsavi grants Locke permission to court my daughter. This proposition, designed to bind Locke to the Barsavi family and ensure his influence over his sons, leaves Locke internally reeling, his knees threatening to buckle. He accepts, knowing that refusal would be a death sentence. The prospect of a future marriage to Nazca, combined with the escalating threat of the Great King, further complicates Locke's already tangled life. The interlude after this chapter, Locke stays for dinner, flashes back to Locke's early days with chains, revealing more about his initial challenges. We learn that Locke's early acts of cunning, specifically the framing of Veslin and Gregor, directly led to their deaths and the subsequent death offering imposed by chains. This brutal lesson in consequences profoundly shapes Locke's understanding of his own actions and the ripple effects of his schemes. The story then returns to the present with the gentleman bastards in their broken tower rooms, grappling with the impossible situation Locke now faces. Caught between Barsavi's demand for marriage and the Great King's enigmatic demands, Bug, in a surprising display of defiance, asserts his desire to actively participate, reminding Locke that he is a real gentleman bastard, and not a mere apprentice. This underscores the evolving dynamics within the group and the increasing stakes for all of them. The Great King, now revealed to be the true orchestrator of Locke's misfortune, makes his presence known through a chilling summons delivered by the falconer, his bondsmage. Locke, lured into a secluded tavern, is confronted by the Great King and his silent, unnerving associate. The Great King, a figure shrouded in mystery and cold efficiency, reveals his intimate knowledge of Locke's true identity, his secret vault, and his elaborate confidence games. He demands Locke's attention, his service, threatening to expose his illicit activities to Barsavi if he refuses. The true horror of the Great King's power is revealed with the presence of the falconer, a bondsmage of Carthan, identifiable by the 3 black rings tattooed on his wrist, a mark of immense power and deadly skill. The falconer's familiar, Vestries, a terrifying, scorpion hawk, an alchemical hybrid with venomous talons, serves as a chilling testament to the bondsmage's capabilities. The falconer demonstrates his power by effortlessly manipulating Locke's body, inflicting agonizing pain with mere gestures, underscoring the futility of resistance. The Great King's demand is shocking. Locke is to impersonate him at a clandestine meeting with Kappa Barsavi in 3 nights. The purpose? To deceive Barsavi and further his own agenda. Locke, despite his outrage, is forced to accept, knowing that his very life, and the lives of his friends, hang in the balance. The Great King, through his bondsmage, promises Locke protection during this dangerous impersonation, and offers a unique method of communication. A red swirled candle that, when lit in solitude, will summon the falconer. The implication is clear. Locke is a pawn, and his fate is entirely at the Great King's mercy. Part 3. Revelation. The unmasking. The third part opens with the somber procession of Kappa Barsavi's funeral. Drums beat a mournful cadence, torches cast blood-red light through the misty streets, and a vast retinue of Barsavi's loyal gangs marches towards the echo hole. The coffin, draped in black silk, is conspicuously empty. Nazca Barsavi's body remains at the floating grave, preserved by alchemy, a grim testament to the Kappa's meticulously planned revenge. Locke, transformed into the Great King through meticulous makeup, gray hair, and a newly acquired gray mustache, stands in the darkness of the echo hole, awaiting Barsavi's arrival. Jean and Bug are hidden beneath the floor, prepared for whatever chaos might ensue. The falconer, through Locke's mind, communicates his presence and readiness. Barsavi's procession fills the echo hole, a cube of elderglass that absorbs light, making the torches flicker eerily. The Kappa's elite fighters, throat-slitters, leg-breakers, maulers, fill the chamber, their grim faces illuminated by the red glow. The Berengia's sisters, Barsavi's formidable bodyguards, stand at the forefront, their presence a silent threat. Locke, embodying the arrogant ruthlessness of the Great King, stands defiant, his voice a low, chilling imitation of his tormentors. Barsavi, without preamble, orders his men to loose a dozen crossbow bolts at Locke. To Locke's astonishment, and the Kappa's utter bewilderment, the bolts harmlessly rebound off an invisible shield, clattering to the floor. The falconer's protection, as promised, is real. Barsavi, still undeterred, unleashes Aemon, a dying man afflicted with consumption, to touch Locke, hoping to confirm the Great King's rumored ability to kill with a touch. Locke, knowing the touch would be fatal for Aemon, due to the bondsmage's hidden magic, desperately tries to warn the man off, but Aemon, spurred on by Barsavi's promise of a rich death, seizes Locke's arm. To Locke's horror, Aemon does not die. He merely lets out a triumphant cry, having touched the Great King, and lived. This unexpected turn of events reveals the true depth of Locke's entrapment. Barsavi, with a cruel grin, reveals his informant, one of the Great King's own men, who had come to him after Nazca's desecration, revealing the bondsmage's specific protection and the fact that the Great King was currently without his mage's power. Locke realizes, with a sickening lurch, that he is completely sewn up. His deception has been exposed, and he is a pawn in a larger game between Barsavi and the true Great King. He has no choice but to endure, his friends' lives now tied to his silence and performance. Barsavi's sons, Anjay and Pachero, then subject Locke to a brutal beating, a visceral display of Barsavi's rage and a perverted justice for Nazca's death. Finally, Barsavi brings forth the funeral cask, a barrel filled with horse urine, the same vile substance in which Nazca's body was returned. Locke is plunged, face first, into the foul liquid, drowning in the ultimate insult. Barsavi, in a paroxysm of vengeful glee, seals the lid, believing his enemy dead. The barrel is then hurled into the waterfall, disappearing into the depths below. The interlude, the Half-Crown War, flashes back to a pivotal period in Locke's youth, detailing his cunning strategies in a juvenile gang war against the Half-Crowns, led by Tesso Volonti. Locke, despite his physical limitations, uses his intellect to outwit Tesso, eventually trapping him with a modified coat sleeve that binds them together, leaving Tesso exposed to Jean's brutal, methodical assault. This earlier conflict demonstrates Locke's innate genius for deception and his willingness to absorb punishment to achieve his goals, foreshadowing his desperate survival in the echo hole. Back in the present, unseen by Barsavi, Jean and Bug, having witnessed Locke's grim ordeal, react with desperate speed. Jean, hearing Barsavi's command to send him out to sea, fears the worst. Bug, true to his impulsive nature, dives into the water and begins hacking at the barrel with Jean's hatchet, while Jean battles a pack of salt devils, horrifying, venomous spiders, that mysteriously appear in the labyrinthine waterways beneath the echo hole. These unnatural creatures, capable of working in concert, hint at a sorceress influence, further implicating the bondsmage. Jean, fighting with savage intensity, dispatches the salt devils, his hatchets becoming wicked sisters of death. He finally breaches the barrel, pulls out Locke's limp body, and frantically attempts to revive him. Locke, barely conscious, is weak and disoriented, his body battered and his mind reeling. Their brief respite is shattered by the horrific discovery and the gentleman bastard's hidden burrow. The sanctuary, once their sanctuary, is ransacked, the lavish furnishings shattered, their carefully curated wardrobe gone. Kalo and Galdo, the inseparable twins, lie dead, their throats slashed from ear to ear. Lying between their bodies is a grotesque, severed human hand, gray and dried and leathery, with Jean's name stitched into the dead skin of the palm. This is a hanged man's grasp, a sinister sorceress charm designed to paralyze its victim. The Grey King's assassin, who had planted this deadly trap, reveals himself, and a desperate confrontation ensues. Bug, in a final, brave act of defiance, charges the crossbowman, only to be struck down with a bolt to the neck. Locke, fueled by a searing rage and grief, exacts a brutal revenge, smashing the assassin with Jean's hatchet and then finishing him with a crossbow butt. Overcome with grief, Locke cradles Bug's dying body, murmuring apologies and vows of vengeance. As Bug draws his last breath, Locke, consumed by a chilling resolve, systematically hacks the sorceress, hanged man's grasp, into pieces, severing its power over Jean. He then lays out his fallen brothers, Kalo, Galdo, and Bug, in a grim tableau, covering their faces with silk tablecloths. With a solemn oath, he dedicates himself to a death offering that will make the gods themselves take notice, a relentless pursuit of vengeance against the Grey King. The sanctuary, their home, their vault, and all their wealth are now gone, victims of the Grey King's ruthless efficiency. Locke, left with nothing but his broken body and a burning desire for revenge, interrogates the captured assassin, learning the grim truth. The Grey King's motive was purely monetary. He desired their fortune to fund his bondsmage's services. He then reveals the Grey King's true name, Luciano Anatolius. Part 4. Desperate improvisation. The final confrontation. The fourth part opens with Locke's slow recovery in a hidden hovel in Ashfall, attended by Jean and a quirky dog leech physician named Ibelius. Locke, still weak and bruised from his ordeal, learns the extent of their losses, their fortune, their home, and their friends. Jean, having rescued Locke from the echo hole, also brings dire news. The gentleman bastards are formally outcast, declared dead by Caporazza, and Jean himself has a price on his head. Despite his physical limitations, Locke's mind races, planning his revenge. He realizes he needs funds to continue his war against Raza. He decides to revive the Don Salvara game, intending to secure more crowns from the unsuspecting noble. However, he is hampered by his lack of suitable disguises and funds. In a desperate gamble, Locke, disguised as Tavern Callus, a victim of theft, attempts to borrow clothes from a law scribe at Miraggio's counting house. His cunning, however, is matched by the law scribe's awareness of Miraggio's tests for new employees, and Locke is swiftly dismissed. Undaunted, Locke improvises. He returns to Miraggio's, disguised as Galdo Avrillane, a Talishani visitor, and successfully borrows a waiter's uniform from a bribed employee named Benjavier. Armed with this new disguise, Locke then confronts Miraggio himself, posing as an agent of Caporazza. He spins a tale of an assassination plot against Miraggio, orchestrated by rival commercial interests, and offers his protection. His bold bluff, coupled with the captured Benjavier as proof, convinces Miraggio to entrust Locke with his own clothes and position in the elevated galleries, effectively making Locke a decoy for the supposed assassin. Locke, now disguised as Miraggio, steps into the heart of the Duke's feast at Raven's Reach, the Glass Tower Palace. He meets Doña Sofia and Don Lorenzo Salvara, who, still oblivious to his true identity, are delighted to have him as their guest for the Day of Changes celebrations. He observes the opulence of the feast, the elaborate culinary subtleties, and the intricate social dynamics of the nobility. The tension escalates when Locke encounters Luciano Anatolius, the true Caparrazza, at the feast. Their brief, tense exchange is a masterclass in veiled threats and double meanings. Locke, playing the role of Lucas for White, subtly hints at his knowledge of Razza's past, referencing his sisters, and the unusual and surprising things that come out of his firm's casks. Razza, recognizing Locke, maintains his composure but is clearly agitated by the unexpected encounter. Locke then seeks out Doña Angiovesta Vorcenza, the Dowager Countess of Amberglass, whom he suspects is the true Spider, the Duke's secret intelligence chief. He finds her in her private solarium, seemingly lost in her knitting. In a shocking turn, Doña Vorcenza, revealing herself as the Spider, attacks Locke with a poisoned knitting needle, injecting him with grief willow poison, which she claims will kill him in minutes. She demands the location of his stolen wealth and the names of his accomplices in exchange for the antidote. Locke, feigning weakness, then reveals his knowledge of her true identity as the Spider and her complicity in Avram Anatolius's murder. He exposes the true nature of Caparrazza's gifts to the Duke. 4 seemingly innocuous sculptures, each filled with wraithstone, a substance that, when burned, eliminates a person's personality, leaving them gentled, empty shells. This horrifying revelation, meant to turn the entire nobility into mindless automatons, stuns Vorcenza and the Salvaras. Locke, having just escaped the bondsmage's tortures, reveals the falconer's complicity and his torture of the bondsmage, leaving the sorcerer fingerless and tongueless. In a desperate plea, Locke convinces Vorcenza to foil Razza's plot. He offers her the location of his stolen fortune, Barsavi's treasure, now mingled with his own, hidden in shit barges north of Camor, in exchange for his freedom and the opportunity to kill Razza himself. He also reveals Razza's backup plan, a plague ship, the Satisfaction, which is actually a pirate vessel filled with animals that can carry the Black Whisper plague, ready to unleash a biological weapon on Camor if his main plan fails. Vorcenza, recognizing the immense danger, agrees to sink the ship and grant Locke his freedom, provided he succeeds in killing Razza. The climax. Justice is read. The stage is set for the final, bloody confrontation. As false light begins to rise, signaling the approaching hour of doom, the Satisfaction is violently destroyed by Camor's throwing engines, fulfilling Locke's grim prophecy and preventing a city-wide plague. Luciano Anatolius, the Great King, now fully Caparrazza, stands alone on the deck of the floating grave, watching his ship burn, his vengeance thwarted. A message then arrives. A burlap sack containing the headless body of Vestries, the Scorpion Hawk, and a note. "We're coming." Razza, consumed by fury and a desire for personal retribution, clears the floating grave of his revelers, transforming the ballroom into a solitary arena for his final confrontation. He awaits Locke, armed with a rapier and driven by 2 decades of meticulously planned vengeance. Locke, exhausted and wounded, arrives at the floating grave, armed with Reynert's rapier. The final duel begins. Locke, outmatched in skill and strength, fights with desperate ferocity, fueled by his grief and desire for vengeance for his fallen friends. Razza, initially confident, finds himself surprised by Locke's improbable resilience and cunning. The fight is brutal and one-sided, with Locke enduring multiple wounds. A shattered wrist, a shoulder pierced by Razza's blade, and numerous blows to his face and body. Yet, Locke's true weapon is his intellect and his absolute refusal to yield. In a desperate, final gambit, he uses his last ounce of strength, and the threat of Jean's imminent arrival, to trick Razza. As Razza whirls, believing Jean is truly there, Locke seizes the moment, pulling a concealed dagger from Razza's own belt and plunging it into his back. With savage cries of, "Calo Sanza!" and "Galdo Sanza!" Locke repeatedly stabs Razza, finishing him with a brutal cut to the throat, declaring, "Bug." His real name was Bertilion Gaddick. "My apprentice, my brother, and my friend." Razza dies, his eyes fixed on Locke's, his elaborate revenge plot ending in his own demise. Locke, victorious but broken, collapses onto Razza's corpse, weeping tears of grief and triumph. Jean arrives shortly after, finding Locke bleeding to death. Locke, in a final act of self-sacrifice, urges Jean to leave him, to escape and find Sabatha, their long-lost companion. But Jean, defiant and fiercely loyal, refuses. He cradles Locke in his arms, his own body aching from his battle with the Berengia's sisters, whom he defeated, killing them both in a brutal fight to the death in the dregs warehouse, and begins to carry him away, a wounded warrior bearing his equally wounded friend into the uncertain future. The body of the Grey King, Caparezza, lies forgotten on the deck, a testament to the brutal consequences of revenge and the enduring power of the gentleman bastards. The epilogue finds Locke and Jean, bruised but alive, on a ship sailing away from Camor, leaving the chaos and bloodshed behind. Locke, still recovering, questions the meaning of their victory, finding it a shit business. Jean, ever loyal, promises to accompany him wherever their journey takes them. The narrative concludes with Locke, in a rare moment of vulnerability, whispering his true name to Jean, a secret he has guarded fiercely, leaving the reader to ponder the true identity of the Thorn of Camor, and the uncertain path that lies ahead for these two extraordinary survivors.